Ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum. Rockstar X, Joel Felsenstein, you are the man. Thank you so much for being a sponsor. Thank you so much for being a partner. Thank you so much for the work you're doing for the neurodiverse and the autistic communities. Different, not less. Thank you, my brother from across the water in the UK. You can find Rockstar X on LinkedIn. Go to their Patreon page and help them out. They're doing amazing things. Check out what they're doing. I'd also like to thank Circle of Friends. Jason Wilson, what an incredible human being. He is doing some unbelievable work, especially recently. You'll see his Freedom Fight Expo that is going to be talking about oncology. We had him on the show with Rochelle Prosser. So great to talk to them. And I'm looking forward to Freedom Fight Expo, August 9th, 10th, and 11th. Make sure you go to that, you sign up. There's incredible speakers that he has lined up. So that's going to be amazing. And finally, last but certainly not least, Lazarus Learning, one of the OG8. 2022, when we first started, we had a little website that I put together myself with these little bitty hands. And then we had 8 partners. And Michelle Arps was one of our first 8 partners, one of the OG8 that helped us start out. Now we have over 90 partners in 6 countries. Thank you so much for those who stand in the gap with us to show leaders how to put people first. This is about creating actionable change, moving beyond awareness to creating actionable change in the world. And talking about actionable change, someone who's doing some incredible things that I can't even... it's going to be incredible. This is going to be a great show. You're going to love this. Ethan Chazen is in the house. He is the CEO and founder of the Chazen Group. He is a performance improvement coach. He is a change management consultant, and he has a great podcast called Chasing the Dream. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Ethan Chazen. Look out. Look out. Yeah. What is that thing that Celine Dion does? What's that thing that Celine Dion is like multiple times? I can't even do it.
That kind of intro, man. Bring the noise, bring the funk, bring the energy, bring it all.
Ethan, so great to see you. We were catching up behind the stages and comparing war scars.
Whoa, brother, when you get to a certain age, the most powerful conversations are what body parts hurt now. So yeah, I appreciate you always.
This is the kind of entertainment we bring to you. You can't get this anywhere else on a Tuesday night. Please. So let's just look. I mean, there's a million things for us to talk about, but let's talk about you and your journey. So I've had the pleasure of talking to you a couple of times, and we trade emails, and I get your newsletter. I also am a fan of the podcast, but we'll get to all of those things. Let's talk first about who you are and your journey, and so that people know more about you and can connect.
Yeah, no, listen, first of all, the work you're doing, Jason, is just phenomenal. And you shining a light on people and their careers and their journeys and their narrative arcs and their trials and tribulations, and them coming through the tunnel to see the light is it's an inspiration. So keep it up. I mean that genuinely.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to come on your program and share a little bit about myself, my journey, because I think that a lot of us share. You and I have talked about this. A lot of us have shared similar kind of challenges throughout our career and what we went through. Although the specifics may be different, we all have been challenged throughout our career. So yeah, my journey is I spent the earlier part of my career, my teens and 20s and up until my 30s, listening to the advice and counsel of people who may have had my best interest at heart, but didn't really have any idea what was really where my career should have been. So I went to the university that people suggested I go to. I went to business school because people thought I should. I spent 20 years in corporate America. If anybody's ever kind of survived that, God bless. Fellow survivor, I spent 20 years being treated pretty awfully. Functionally, my MBA and my career was earlier in marketing and supporting sales organizations and product development. And I had an epiphany. My last day job, I was at a company here in New York City for a year, 2007 to 2008. In my role, heading up their marketing, the year that I was there, I generated about 40% increase in their revenue. My reward was I was laid off with about 15,000 other people. You know this, Jason, firsthand. When big company A talks to big company B about merging, they have to make the financials look better. So I came home at night, talked to my wife, who knows me better than anybody. We went to high school together. We've been together through thick and thin. I told her I can't go find another day job, be treated like garbage, and help them generate revenue. She listened to me kind of vent, and she waited till my mouth stopped moving, and she said, well, it took you long enough.
Wow.
And that's where going on 16 years ago, I decided I'm going to go out on my own and help as many people as I can, however I can, find the light. And whether that means finding a new job, re-entering the job market, or now in my current role as a business growth coach, helping people find organizations that share their values. And that's what I do as an employment coach and a business growth coach, where I focus, as you noticed with the podcast, on culture transformation. It's all about, in the 21st century, aligning yourself with a great place to work.
I'm curious because I've had a lot of conversations with people that do work with people that are either thinking of transitioning to another job or that are in the middle of transitioning. They're already in that, whether that's because they were laid off or, whatever the circumstances are, they need a new job. Do you subscribe to the idea that if you want to work for said company X, that you should go do your research, make sure that they align with your values and what you want to be doing, and actually start to network with them and find out more about them and network with people that are willing to talk to you that actually work there?
Yeah, no, that's spot on, man. That's an amazing question. And I would say that earlier on in my consulting, when I was primarily an executive or career coach, I'd say, yeah, heck yeah. But that's predicated on a few things happening. Meaning the first is the individual has to know what her or his or their values are. Because if you don't really know what's really important to you at that point in your life and career, it makes it hard to be in alignment with another organization's values. The second step is you got to know what, every organization is kind of a Jekyll and Hyde. If you think about culture, there's the formal culture, it's aspirational, it's what they claim it is. And then there's the informal culture, which is the values that they actually have their people live and breathe every day. So you and I both know, if you want to go work for a hedge fund, and I'd say stop the insanity, or you want to go work for a bank or a financial services firm, that feels, when you're an employee in there, a little bit different than Chobani or Kind or Tom's Shoes or Patagonia, great places to work that have great cultures. So I would say, yes, that's my advice if you know those two things. In fact, I tell people the magic of the 18 to 32. And what that means is if you know your values and your beliefs and what you're looking for in an ideal culture that'll nurture you, then, and 3 or 4 or 5 industries that are interesting to you, go find a short list and do the research of 4 or 5 firms in each. And then you now have a short list of 18 to 32 organizations to research. Find out vision, mission, code of conduct, principles, ethics, how they treat their employees, culture scores, how they treat their vendors, partners, suppliers, for sure. And then go speak to people who are there and figure out how to position yourself. But yeah, absolutely, if you know those two things. What makes it harder is when I say formal culture, a lot of organizations still haven't had that found Jesus moment where they actually change their culture. So they're going on what they think people are saying, and they're using keywords like DE&I or conscious capitalism or social corporate responsibility. We treat our people like a family, and you're laughing because you know this is true, and that's all just spin. So that's the deal.
Yeah, great comment, and great to see Lewis here. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Christine Bell. I can't wait to see your show a little bit later. Snappy Chat. Get on there and see that later this evening, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Christine Bell has a great show called Snappy Chat, and she's one of the Hounds of Business community leaders, so check it out.
Yeah,
but if we don't know our own beliefs, if we don't know our values and beliefs, we are like a car or ship without direction in the dark. So true.
Yep. And I mean, that's what Christine said is absolutely true. If you don't know where you're going from a career perspective, any path will take you there. So, and in fact, my focus now over the last 7 or 8 years is I focus on the organization side. And it's the same thing with Christine's point. Organizations who know we need to change our culture, but they don't know how. That's I find really interesting space, because we're in really you talked in the intro, we're in transformational times from organizational perspective. We really are.
Yes. And it makes a difference. You know, people will say, hey, I don't know how you expect me to do all those things that you said. I've got to get a job. It's pressing on me. I'm going to end up going through all my savings, or I need this. Yep. Well, then they start with the idea of I'll do the, pray and spray and just a whole bunch of things out there and see what happens. And then they get frustrated because they've gone through all of these interviews to only find out that those jobs weren't even right for them in the first place. So, I say, look, I'm with you. Better to, especially in this dumpster fire of a job market, I would say absolutely do everything you can on the back end to make sure and then present your greatest value so that they know that they just can't live without you. They need you.
Amen. And to your point, I love what you're saying, and I mean that's what I advocated for the first 15 years of my practice. But I take it even a step farther. So I'm talking to two groups right now. I'm talking to the person you just talked about, and I'm also talking to the organization who's in search of that rock star. I would say, it's almost a Dr. Phil moment for the individual. And how's that working out for you? But from an organization standpoint, I'd say effective immediately. And I coach this. Stop hiring for a job description. And that's part of the transformation, right? You got this thing, a job description. So somebody's looking for that job on the individual side. They're looking for job title, roles, responsibilities, maybe minimum experience and other requirements. But so they're applying for that job based on that narrow definition of everything that they can bring to the table. And on the organization side, they're hiring a candidate. It's the whack-a-mole where you have the shape peg and you hammer it into and you and I know that's, and then, you're hammering that candidate into an artificially created narrow focus, and instead stop searching for people on a set of roles, responsibilities that may change tomorrow or in 3 months. Technology will change, competitive landscape will change, your strategy is going to change every day. And then that person and that job become obsolete. Instead, look for universal characteristics of amazing people. And those individuals you were talking to about stop shotgun approach, promote the stuff that makes you unique and valuable, memorable. Problem solver, intrinsically motivated. You've demonstrated leadership. You can work on teams. You're creative. You're driven. You care about community and volunteer. That stuff is what those amazing 21st century organizations are looking for. And it's a love marriage then. Yeah. And you're never, ever, ever going to respond to a job posting again.
I love that. And I also think that people get under the impression that not doing the work somehow will land them like there's going to be some magical wand that they can wave, and they're going to get lucky, where it's just not that way.
No, and
But
no,
it's just not that way. I mean,
no.
you look at, but I love what you said about, I want to dive into this more because I love what you said about companies, because as you know, from our conversations and what you've seen of what the work that we do, we're all about, not only paying a living wage, but also having leaders understand that value of people. So when you really truly value people, when you really care, you understand that the way to make your bottom line thrive is to have a group of intelligent people around you that you listen to, you create safe spaces for, you allow them to be seen, heard, and you make them feel valued, but you touch base with them, you care about who they are, you take note of their kids and their loved ones and what they're doing, and you allow them the space to fail forward, but you also give them the room to cross train, to upskill, and to make themselves even more valuable. They will stay with you through thick and thin. They will help you come up with ideas so that you don't have to lay off people. They will do so much incredible work for you. So I want people out there to understand, to look for those kinds of companies, and you can see it. You could see it, you could hear it when you start to dive in. And for companies, I want you to understand that you want those type of employees with you. So do the work. Do the
So,
work.
a few thoughts about this, because I think you've gotten to the Chewy Nuki center of the Charleston Chew of the 21st century workplace. And without spending an hour on this, because I could go there real quick, what we're talking about is the intersection of people who care passionately about themselves and making a lasting impact, and organizations who understand the only path forward today is through their people. So you got three levers in the organization you can pull to be successful, right? You got strategy, that'll change day in, day out. You got operational efficiency. Every organization is kind of moving towards that with technology, AI, chat, GPT, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
The people are your only lasting competitive advantage. It's always been that way. But guess what? Now we have several decades of objective data in organizational behavior. As you just said, and I spent 15 years coming up with a proprietary process to do this, we can actually come up with an employee ROI that says every individual in your organization, whether you have 5 people to 50,000, not just the salespeople, every individual, we can come up with their value. So you're paying them, on every dollar you're paying them, you're spitting away 75 cents conservatively, because you hired them based on a core set of roles and responsibilities they can prove they may have done elsewhere. That's a job description. But what do they bring to the table that you're not empowering them with?
Mm.
Cultural diversity, language proficiency, upbringing, cultural diversity, certifications, accreditations, education, all that stuff, study abroad, gap year, volunteer work, community engagement, all that stuff that makes every human being fundamentally unique. We need to embrace that. Here's what's going on behind the scenes that we haven't even talked about. Every day in America, tens of thousands of boomers and matures are leaving the workforce, right?
Yep.
I spent 10 years researching this in my second book, The Compassionate Organization. Who's entering the job market? Gen Zs, millennials. Whole different set of expectations about the employee-employer contract and the relationship. And if you as an organization don't figure this out, you're not going to have those people. And we've talked about this. You and I have talked about this. There is, I'm going to say this to everybody listening, if you're an ability to hire people or make those decisions, there is no war on talent. Mic drop. There's no war on talent. Do you think Google and Disney and Marriott and Nucor Steel and DuPont and Gore and Wegmans, do you really think that they're struggling to? No, because they've built over decades an amazing reputational brand about what you said, caring about people. Your people will perform and produce at a high level, and that'll maximize your profitability. All you got to do is shut up and start focusing on your people. That's it. And you and I have talked about this, and I'm out there every day talking to businesses to get them to have these epiphanies you and I have been talking about for going on 2 years now.
And here's the funny thing. It's not even our idea. It's like if you go back, we've been talking about this for decades. Harvard Business, Money Magazine, Forbes, anyone and everyone has done a research, has had the data, has crunched the numbers, the whole thing with retention. When people start talking about productivity, retention, now you start talking about wellness. You bring wellness into about mental and physical wellness. Now, all of a sudden, if you're really not in tune with all of that, you're so far behind, because now people are like, I am fried. I have been doing all of this. I am burnt out. I don't feel valued here. I don't feel seen here. I am so unproductive. I am literally sitting at my desk, and half the day I'm just like going to meetings and going through the motions. I don't even know what I'm doing here. That costs companies millions of dollars a year.
Billions and billions and billions, to quote Carl Sagan. Yeah. And as you said, this is under the aegis of, we call it psychological safety, right? We create a culture, which is just as simple as culture is how people in your organization feel and act every day. You create an environment in which you're dedicated to the proposition that your people are not an asset. An asset is what Gandhi said, it's beneath human dignity to treat people as if they're cogs in the machine. You treat people the way they should be treated. Your people are your only lasting competitive advantage. And you're right, we got decades on this, buddy, but you could also, if you have the attention span of a grape nut, you could literally go to a nonprofit called Ethisphere. They've been researching this for going on, 20 some odd years. Every year they have the list of the most ethical organizations in the world. If you want to go work in a great place, start there. To narrow your search. I'll give you an example, man. I had the son of the founder of a company come on my podcast. It's called Morningstar, not the ratings agency, the tomato company in Southern California. Yeah. Chris Roofer, and he started the company 50 years ago, predicated on a central proposition from day one, which is no job titles. Everybody, we bring in the best, we give them autonomy, and we empower them to be able to decide as grown-ass adults how they do the work, where they do it, when they do it, and who they do it with. That's that whole
love that
big model. Yeah.
Yeah. How great is that? It's a lot like the model. It's very similar to the model of employee-owned companies, which I'm a huge fan of.
Oh yeah, ESOPs, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm totally a fan of that, because who's going to care more? It's my business. I'm no longer, I don't refer to myself as an employee. I'm an owner. I'm an owner in this company. I care what happens.
And that's what we call, blood, sweat, and tear equity. You have to understand, if you haven't really lived in this world the way we have, that that command control pyramid structure, which we inherit from the nobility in the 1600s, that's what fueled the Industrial Revolution. And unfortunately, some companies are still foolishly playing around with that idea that lots of layers of bureaucracy, it's all about controlling people. It creates toxicity, stress, no work-life balance, no health and wellness. It literally subsumes the human being until they're merely an asset, imminently replaceable. They're a photocopier with limbs. And in my coaching practice, I teach organizations, you want to survive post-pandemic? This isn't a nice to have. You need to figure this out and start doing it, like now. Because the word's getting out. You and I and others like us are proselytizing the shift to a more humanistic, transformational 21st century workplace.
This is a great transition into or segue into my next question, which you started to allude to, because what happens when I'm Joe, the owner of said company, and I come to you, Ethan, and I say, I need help.
Yeah.
Like, where do we begin?
Yeah.
Like, where do you begin with people?
And I mean, that's an amazing question. I would so much appreciate you. And it's typically not even that general. They're literally pointing to a pain point. You know, we can't find or retain Gen Zs. Our people are not, you had said it before, our people are not engaged. We've got like flat growth since COVID. I mean, they're literally touching parts, or they're identifying some kind of physical effects. They're not going to the root pain. But so that's where I'll typically go in and I'll do what's called the human capital audit. And I'll take a look across the organization. I literally do a bunch of conversations. I never speak to the owner because they're clueless. I never speak to the leadership team because they're clueless. I speak to those people who we used to call the at the bottom of the pyramid. We used to call them the peasants or frontline staff. I go there. I survey them. I ask, do you feel like your work is meaning? Do you understand the ethics and the principles of the organization? Are you empowered to achieve your full potential? I mean, it's all those questions. And then I go back and I tell the owner or the leadership team, oh, and by the way, I talked to one or two of their suppliers, vendors. I talk to their direct competitors. I go there and I gather up a bunch of information about, here's where I would start. If you're a publicly traded company, you probably, or even a nonprofit, your board is contributing to your suffering. I'll go there. And then I'll tell the owner or a few people on the leadership team, we need to start with you because you're the problem. Because 99 times out of 100, it's the people at the top. Because again, they're so removed from the day in, day out operations. They're the problem. So that's where I typically go. But it's one of a few things. I don't know if I'm getting a return on my people investment. Couldn't tell you that, Chase, and I could not answer it. I'm stuck. Can't find talented people. And this makes me freaking crazy, when they say, well, you know, these Gen Zs today, and they fill in some negative pejorative. And you and I have riffed off of this, brother. I teach. I've taught in 10 colleges and universities. I think I know Gen Zs pretty well. They bring a bunch of stuff to the table that organizations need to start leveraging. Understanding that they grew up, face to screen, so there's some challenges, but man, that makes me crazy. That to me is a white flag, like you asked.
We're at a time period. What is it? There's 5 generations right now in the
5.
workforce. 5 generations in the workforce.
Uh-huh.
This is this is incredible. And as my wife and I are boomers, and we're, I'm one, for me, that's like, okay, I'm going to work until I literally can't move anymore, because I love what I'm doing.
Right.
Because I'm passionate about what I do, because I love it. To me, it's a lifestyle. It's not about a job. And for other people, they do it because they want to go to a certain time period, then they want to get Social Security or whatever, and here they go. Wherever you are, whether you're starting your career or you're ending your career, everyone has value. Everyone has value. So when you as a leader are open to use the gifts, you've been given 2 of these and 1 of these. So let's close this and let's open these, and let's start figuring out what we need to do. And it's I love that you said this. I love it, because you hear it all the time. Especially at the beginning of this year. I don't know I can't remember the things that were going on that sparked this whole thing all across social media. But I think it was all of this about telling people they had to go back to the workplace.
Right. COVID's over. You need to come back. And then the other thing was the residual, the lingering feelings of silent quitting. That was another of the kind of things that you're alluding to, where we're not going to care about your wants, needs, desires. You get your butt in here if you want a job. And oh, by the way, people had already been burned out. And I don't think societally, Chasing, to go even further, because this is your world, not mine so much, I don't think we adequately addressed the amount of damage that was done to people across the 5 generations in terms of a global pandemic with 1 million plus Americans losing their lives. I don't think we ever really got past that, nor were we given the opportunity to. Oh, and guess what? Now you need to get your butt in the office.
Yeah, I think people got to the beginning of 2024. For a lot of people, 2023 was a little rough.
Yep.
And there was a mental awakening of like, I am fried. And I think more and more people were like, okay, wait a minute. We went through this whole hellish thing, that really finally ended end of 2021, kind of 2022. But I mean, there was like all of this remnants of stuff in 2022. Here we are in 2023. It's like, okay, I am burnt, I am fried, I'm crispy. Now people are trying to say that, oh, it's over, so come back in the office. And the beginning of 2024, there's that, oh, hell no. No. Yeah. I'm not doing that anymore. Yeah. And so employers are like, no one wants to work. No one wants to work anymore. No one wants to work. I can't find anybody that wants to work. They don't want to work for you.
Right.
It's not that they don't want to work. They just don't want to work for you.
Right. So, and let's kind of take this in deep dive for a moment, if we can. If we kind of focus it, you're right. So you go matures, boomers, Gen Xers like me, millennials, Gen Zs, and now the new one, the alphas, who were born on and after 2010. They're soon going to be the 6th generation. But for the Gen Zs mostly, like my daughter who's 24, they went through the end of high school during COVID remotely. They went into college not having that collegiate experience. They graduate, they get their first job, and oh, guess what the reward is for being distant and isolated and losing out on all that social interaction? Here's a laptop, work remotely. Don't build relationships, no water cooler, no identifying coaches or mentors. So you got none of that, and now it's, you need to, as you said, 2024, hello, get your you-know-what in the office without any sensitivity to what the individual's wants, needs, desires are. And then on top of that, you and I haven't even talked about understanding the individual in the organization that you hired, their personality, which, I mean, I'm DISC certified, so we do that. Personality assessments. What's your preferred communication style? So you and your wife are boomers. I'm a Gen Xer, but I'm an extroverted introvert. Like, how do I prefer to interact with my team members? None of that is going on. Welcome to 2024, and just get in here and do a job.
Yeah, there's a lot happening, and I don't want it to be all gloom and doom for people that are going back in this and they're jumping in. It is not. I think what it is, though, is a wake-up call for leadership to say, hey, unless I want to be on the news tomorrow as one of those companies that just handed out a whole bunch of pink slips, I'm going to do this. I'm going to back up. I'm going to stop hiring. I'm going to start looking at staff, start talking to people. I'm going to start upskilling, reskilling, cross-training. I'm going to stick with the people that are really showing up and want to be here. I'm going to start pouring into them. I'm going to build better trust. I'm going to make sure that people are taken care of. I'm going to find out what they need. I'm going to ask better questions. I'm going to listen more and talk less.
Yeah.
And then when we're healthier, and we see that there's a horizon of, okay, profits are soaring again, things are happening, people are invested, we've got higher productivity, our scores are better because people are starting to really work together, and there's teamwork and there's conversations, then let's find out what we really need. And then if we don't have that internally, then we'll look at slowly moving externally so that we can maintain what we're doing and we don't ever have to lay off people.
So I love the way you ended that. I mean, I love the totality of what you just said, man. Amen. And the end of it is the notion of how do you treat your people when times are tough is the same as how you treat them when they come in. Societally speaking, it's how do you treat young ones and elderly in your society? How do you treat an employee when times are going tough? And we saw this during COVID. So organizations who have in their DNA, in their culture DNA, they have said, we do not believe in layoffs. And I did a lot of work with them, including some in retail hospitality. They said, okay, worst case scenario, we did everything else we could. We don't have any other viable option now, whether we live or die, unless we lay people off. What they said was, we're going to temporarily curtail hiring. We're going to temporarily transition people out. And any person who we transitioned out, we will bring back first. But, what you just described about timeout, no more hiring, put a finger on the pulse of the culture. That's what I do day in and day out in my practice. But the other thing is, now we know you can measure culture. And that's been part of my seminal work the last 15 years, is giving organizations the insight into what is culture, how do you build it, how do you measure it, and how do you maintain it. And that's what you were saying for the longest time. Even small to mid-sized businesses, even nonprofits, they weren't able to say, what are we doing well? What are we not doing well? What is culture? And that's really where my passion comes from, is helping organizations build something that I never experienced. I'm not joking when I said I was treated pretty horribly in corporate America for 20 years. That's the 800-pound gorilla on my shoulders every time I talk to an organization is, stop outsourcing, stop laying off, stop doing all the other toxic, destructive stuff. Because guess what? When things get better, the damage you did to the people who you fired or laid off, that's obvious. What's not as obvious to what you were saying before, Jason, is the damage to the people who stayed and saw their friends forced out.
I like the term. I love that term. I love that term, that whole idea of stay interviews. The stay interview. How's it going? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong?
Yeah.
What would you like to see? What do you need?
Well, this is so funny to me because everything you say is so on point and topical. Just today, my buddy, my partner, who's a fractional HR guy on LinkedIn, talked about the value of stay interviews. But here's what this sounds like. Check this out. An exit interview is, I'm sorry, this relationship isn't working. I'm just not that into you. And you turn around on the exit interview and go, what happened? At that point, it's just a little bit too late in the game. A stay interview is, to anybody listening, it's not that complicated. What are we doing that you like? What are we doing that made you come here? What are we doing that makes you stay here? What are we doing that empowers you, recognizes you, coaches, trains, mentors, listens to you, acts on your ideas? And oh, by the way, who else do you know in your circle of friends who are an amazing rock star that we could literally bring in and find a place for, because you are part of our future? And that's not a once-a-year performance review. That's stupid. We're only going to do this at the end of the year. It's called the performance review. No, it's actually every day is what I hear you saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dom, you're trying to get all of us in trouble. I don't know. I have stay interviews with my wife. That's every Friday. That's every Friday on date night. I'm just saying. I'm so. Dom is on our advisory board. He's a partner, and he's my co-host for our Time to Change podcast.
And so he's coming at it from a whole other perspective.
And what's funny is that he has a wonderful thing called the Let Go Plan. And we talked about that on a show very similar to this. So, Christine, stay interviews are like, it shouldn't be a new thing, but it's so new to a lot of people. People, here's the thing. If you're the kind of company that's going to do a review once a year, I don't like that. I think you should do that. I honestly, I think quarterly reviews are the way to go. If you want to tie them into either once or twice a year, them being a financial review, hey, we've had all of these one-on-ones, we've had all of these quarterly reviews. Here's what this means. And based on this metric, here's what we're going to give you this next year. Oh, and by the way, we're not going to be one of those crappy companies that there's 10% inflation and we're going to give you a 1%, increase. We're going to go, our increase structure, whether it's 1, 2, and 3%, is going to be on top of whatever inflation is. And we've built that into our budget. Now, that's a smart company that's looking out for people and says, I care about you enough that I want you to be here and I want you to be able to take care of your family. That's okay. But those one-on-ones, those times where you go out and you take that time to talk to people and ask questions, and then you do these stay interviews, that is the way you keep people, to build trust and let them know that you care.
And not to get too verbose, that's how I'm hardwired. To your point, I would even one up the game. I would say those quarterlies, that's lowest common denominator. That's the least you can do as an organization. The conversations with a leader should happen with their people. And by the way, they're not direct reports and they're not the owner's people, they're peers. So as a project lead or a leader talking to your people, that should be every day. There should be at least monthly formal sit downs, and the conversation should be flipped so that this is how it sounds. Ethan is the direct report. Chasen's the leader. Chasen says to Ethan, what are you getting from me that works? What are you not getting from me? What have I done well? What have I not done well? End of conversation. And then you go back and you're responsible. If I make my numbers, which by the way, goals are only valid if I set them. But every month, where I am relative to plan is a reflection on you. And you have ownership of that. So you do that monthly, you do it quarterly, you do it annual for sure. But nothing is more important than weekly meetings with your team. Every agenda item, the first one on a weekly meeting should be some huddle up where you discuss as a team the prior week, each of you doing things that mapped that week to one of your core values. So if your core value is community engagement, or if your core value is putting our people first, every team in your organization every week should be addressing. And yeah, Dom has said it's servant leadership, whatever you want to call it. Amen. There's 11 styles of leadership. That's servant leadership.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And we could have made this like a 2-hour session because we're starting to run out of time, and I have a couple of things I want to make sure that we address. No, this is fantastic. There is one thing that I wanted to just talk about a little bit, and then I want to hit on your podcast and stuff before time runs out. But if you are a leader that wants to work with you, if a person or an organization that wants to work with you, what's the best way? I've been flashing down through the entire show your website, but what's the best way for them to reach out to you? And by the way, folks, in the description of this on LinkedIn and on YouTube, you can find all of Ethan's links. Please make sure you go to them because there's a lot of great information there. Yeah, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, Ethan?
I mean, I would say don't even bother going to the website. I really appreciate you putting there. Just call me. My cell phone is 917-239-5571, or email me. It's ethan@thechasengroup.com. But I would love to talk to anybody who's grappling with some of these conversations or challenges around unleashing your people's untapped potential, unsticking your business, and my favorite is how do you build a great place to work, which becomes so easy to actually hire great people because you're giving them a community, a tribe, a workplace of other great people.
Christine, thank you for being here. I will see you at your show in a few minutes, but thank you so much. Thank you, Dom. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Lewis, and anyone else that I can't see because that just is the way it is, especially if you're on your phone and you're on LinkedIn. Forget it. I can't even see it. So I'll catch those comments tomorrow as I'm going through them. But you know what? Last, before we get off, I definitely want to talk about your podcast. What everybody's got it seems like everybody's got a podcast, everybody's got a newsletter. But why did you decide that you wanted to do a podcast? And I noticed that you're on a different season. So tell us about what season you're on. Tell us about the kind of people that come and are on the show. I thank you for allowing me to come on your show. It was a great time to be there. And also tell us where they can find your podcast.
Yeah, no. Look, first of all, you came on the show, and I really appreciate that. But where my mind was, it's really Chasing the Dream was actually two separate podcasts. The first was a few years ago when I started this thing called consulting. I started Chasing the Dream to give people a platform to talk about how does their life have meaning? How do they search for work that doesn't have to suck? How do they find organizations that care and respect and trust them? And then as I transitioned, Jason, I got away from the individual work and I got more into advising organizations. And last year, I picked on something you said, which was there was this general feeling of we want our organizations to care. We want to build great cultures. This was every conversation I pretty much had with business owners, executives. And I said, hold on, let's relaunch Chasing the Dream, but from the ability to bring people on who are doing stuff that you and I are doing. They're creating happy workplaces. They're giving their people voices and power and just really, really rethinking that work doesn't have to stink, that you shouldn't have to wake up every day and go, oh, I have to go to work, and that you can actually have your life have meaning through work by working with an organization that shares your values. So when you go to YouTube, it's just the Chasing Group. And like you said, there's two seasons. The first I talked to about 18, 19 folks. It was once every week. And then this season we're wrapping up. I've talked to about 15 folks. And the shift has been at first season, more people who shared their careers and what they were dealing with and going out and starting their own, whether they were fractionals or starting their own business. This season is executives and business owners in places like Chewy, the online pet order service, and Morningstar and Saks LLP, and just talking about the power of creating a great place to work. And it's starting, man. You can feel it. It's visceral. And this is what I've noticed after 15 years. People want to work in places like this, and a lot of people want to create workplaces like this. And that's what Chasing the Dream is all about.
Love it. Love it. We have been talking to Ethan Chasen. Give it up, people. Ethan Chasen in the house. Look out. This has been fantastic, man. I'm going to have all kinds of crazy clips from this. And if you missed this, I'm going to be talking about this ongoing. So please make sure you catch up. You go to his website. You check him out. You check out what he's doing. You connect with him. If you are not connected, fix that. Let's get on that. And this has been our People Community event. Thank you for being here. You have a good one now.